the border gets politicized a lot. You hear a lot of like, oh, caravans are coming, or children are being separated from their parents or their families. Take me into some of that scenario. So like if you apprehend a family, then what happens?
So everyone who's apprehended, and I'll walk you through from the point of apprehension to getting into the station, and in some cases criminally prosecuted or released or returned. There's a couple scenarios. As soon as that arrest is made, the agent, and what we have to recognize is that we're still dealing with a criminal element.
Right.
So just like any law enforcement officer, he or she goes through that whole procedure of pat down, checking bags and whatever else. When you have an organization, a criminal organization that's pulling in billions of dollars, dropping $5,000 or $10,000 in the pockets of a Mexican official to look the other way is nothing.
Yeah.
So this multi-billion-dollar industry has a drive, has a need to keep that money coming in.
Yeah.
So the agents are contending with, you've got unaccompanied children. And when we say this, I want to paint the picture. A lot of these unaccompanied children are young men between the ages of 15 and 17.
Okay.
I'd say about probably half of them. And then the rest are everything from a 12-year-old. One of the things I see frequently is you'll have 8 or 9-year-old with a younger sibling who's about 5 or 6, and sometimes a 2 or 3-year-old with them. And they're traveling thousands of miles by themselves to our border and then coming across. And it blows my mind. I've got an 8-year-old, and I couldn't imagine saying, here's a phone number. When you get to the U.S., call this number and somebody's going to come and find you. I couldn't imagine sending my child out on this journey by himself.
Oh, we had a 4-year-old when I was growing up that wandered over to our house, like from the neighbors. They used to do a bunch of drugs next door. And he knocked on the door. He said he was going to the Dollar General. He's like 4 years old. We're like, you're not going to the Dollar. Like, this kid's out of his mind. It's like 2 miles away. We're like, this guy's, So we sent him home, man. But yeah, I can't even imagine like a kid going a really far distance out of, and it's hot over there. I mean, I lived in Tucson for a while, dude. It's spicy.
Oh yeah, and take it back. So if you're leaving from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, you're traveling a couple thousand miles, 2 to 4 weeks. Think about a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old doing this by himself, or maybe with a group of other kids. What happens between the moment they leave their house till they get to the border? And when you get to the border, you're right. There's the dangers of just the environment by itself, the Rio Grande, the desert, the heat. Well, the heat and the cold. It'll kill you either or.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Then you have people that will take advantage of these kids.
Yeah.
And one of the things that just breaks my heart, because I've seen this countless times, you get kids that are rented, because one of the things that happens is if you present as a family unit, here's Roy, mom, a couple kids, I'm going to get released. And so what we were seeing was kids being rented. And so you've got a parent back in Guatemala who rents their child for $1,500, and that's a tremendous amount of money in Guatemala.
Yeah.
And so the kid is brought to the border, put in with a pseudo family, sits in detention, and then is released. And then a handler, a smuggler, picks up this child, flies him back to Guatemala.
Wow.
That's the best case scenario, right?
Right.
What happens with kids that just disappear? And we saw this happen. As soon as you identified that child, because it would take 1 or 2, sometimes 3 times before the system would pick them up, because not all children are fingerprinted. And once you've identified them, and you latch onto this group and you expose it, if you can control and get that child back into the hands of the parent, win. If you can't, if that child happens to get released with that family and then the smuggling organization realizes that the child is now blown,
right,
I don't know what happens to him.
Yeah, it's like, is it worth them getting them a plane ticket or a bus ticket back to Guatemala? Is it worth, or is it just cheaper for them, especially after they've already been doing a lot of dirty business, to just not care, or get them into something else even worse?
It's a business that doesn't care about the person. It's a business that's driven by money. So whether it's trafficking, whether it's returning to the family, best case scenario, and or becoming an indentured servant, working in some sort of industry, being sexually trafficked, all of those are realities of what we see at the border.
Hope you enjoyed that video, and you can watch another. And you can watch this one, you can watch this one. Different options, different choices. Some guy just brings you one option, not this guy. 2 options. Watch one, this one or this one.